Good morning or good afternoon based on where you are. My name is Luca De Risi. I am Mega CEO, and I'm glad to welcome you to the fourth edition of the Mega EA Exchange Conference. Today we'll talk about the latest trends on enterprise architecture, how it is impacted by AI, how it plays an increasing role in data governance, in security, and you will hear from our customers, our partners, industry analysts. You'll also see the latest innovations we brought in our new release, ROPEX Aquila. I hope you love it. But before we get started, I would like to give you our views on the evolving role of EA in 2023. 2023 is marked by the race to artificial intelligence. And this is the digital innovation that is fastest disrupting business models. If you compare it to past innovations, past inventions, like go back to 1991 with the creation of the World Wide Web. It took at least 10 years before the internet bubbled in the 2000s. Social networks with LinkedIn created in 2002, and then only really adopted years later. Facebook, then mobile, 2007 with the iPhone, also took a few years before it was adopted by businesses. Cloud, many years. But then less than a year ago, OpenAI creates ChatGPT and releases it to the market. And less than a year later, I don't know a single technology company that is not promoting AI-based features. And the thing is, it is impacting operating models fully. All departments in organizations are using AI today. Talk about marketing with SEO, where titles, keywords, content is initialized or created with generative AI. Communication, to edit videos, to translate. Software development, to write code, document, debug, but also human resources, data analysis, customer service. At Mega, we even have a case with legal, where earlier this year, a customer asked for a policy for the transportation of hazardous materials. Well, at Mega, we're a software company, SaaS, we don't transport much, and let alone hazardous materials. But we had to comply. So with generative AI, we created a first policy that was really good. Of course, we had it completely reviewed, vetted by our security department, and in a matter of hours, we had our transportation of hazardous materials policy. We saved a lot of time. And the same time can be saved all around the organizations. I'll give you another example. That's an example of a European energy company. And I know the director for communication there, and they use generative AI all the time. They create content with generative AI. They create videos with HeyGen or InVideo to produce videos based on avatars or pictures in a matter of minutes. And they then translate those in 15 languages to communicate with the whole world. So every day they save hours. But what is the flip side here? Is that they haven't asked IT or informed even IT for any of those purchases. So now they use a lot of AIs, they use generative AI, software tools, SaaS software, without informing anyone. And then comes the risk. The first risk is just like when you swipe your card and buy a new subscription to a SaaS product. If you don't ask IT, well, it's going to be faster for sure, but you may create software redundancies where you have different softwares doing the exact same thing in different departments. You'll have data redundancies, and that's maybe even worse because data is essential for reporting and for AI itself. So you may create data redundancies, you don't know what comes in, what comes out, if it matches the rest of the organization, integration issues, increasing technology costs, and even data privacy issues. Data quality is one of the core pieces here because to have good AI and good quality reporting, you need quality of data, of course. And then when you listen to the McKinsey global survey on AI from April this year, you'll see that the top concerns from managers on AI are inaccuracy, because yes, it's good, but it can be inaccurate, cybersecurity, and the infringement of intellectual property. And those three categories of risk make enterprise architects increasingly strategic in organizations. The role of architect, the way we see it at Mega, is a driver for transformation and the ability to adapt to change. With architects, you plan transformation in a way to be agile, to respond to change quickly, lean, respond to change at low cost, but also resilient. reducing risk. And the role of architects when it comes to AI is increasingly important, because now with the CIO, you need to build the digital and AI strategy, make sure it's articulated and coordinated within the organization. You need to ensure success of multi-million projects. Is it the integration of AI, but also ERP migrations, CRM migrations, replacements? Data quality we mentioned, making sure that there's a good data governance in place where data is understood and communicated with a strong data lineage so that you can empower AI. And then security, putting in place the right policies and the right controls, especially for AI, because we've seen all the risks above. With HopeX Aquila, we address those points, and I'm really glad to present this release that just came out, in which we help companies plan and adapt to change. HopeX Aquila is still the one single repository where you can manage business, IT, data, and risk information, all the way from processes and capabilities, all the way down to risks and data management. Why? To run impact analysis and better adapt to change, but also to foster collaboration between all the different teams involved. All that on one platform. But for existing customers, you'll see that the biggest difference with HopeX Aquila is the UI UX. If you remember what Forrester said at the beginning of the year, Mega has the strongest offering on the market. We're of course very proud of that. With HopeX Aquila, we want to present the most powerful offering combined with a great UI UX to help you increase success and adoption throughout the organization. You'll see that, well, of course, we have embedded AI, but in a way to help you accelerate efforts. We want to jumpstart EA practices by discovering your applications and data, scanning servers, databases, then using AI to classify the information and even connect applications to business capabilities, so that then you're ready to transform, plan your transformation, think about the target state, and we automate all that initial discovery part for the EA inventory. Last but not least, we want to be the software to adapt to your level of maturity. We know that EA can have different levels of maturity in different organizations. We want to be the tool that helps you start small with a modular approach, with an approach based on simple configuration. You decide what you want to see yourself as a user, and a profile-based approach to just give you the information you need and make sure we have good segregation of duties. So with all that, you'll see more today. I hope you love it. And in the meanwhile, I would like to conclude and say, yes, with artificial intelligence, the role of enterprise architects is even greater than before to plan transformation and adapt to change quickly, with a specific role for data governance and security. I hope you will love what you see about HopeX Aquila and the new UX together with the new features and AI that we bring with it. But in the meanwhile, I would like to introduce a very esteemed guest to give you a CIO's perspective on enterprise architecture and its role for transformation. Thank you very much, and see you in a very little bit. Hey Mike, how are you today?
Great, Luca. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for being here. Everyone, I want to introduce Mike Fulton. Mike is the CIO of Vernovis. He was a chief cloud architect at P&G. He worked with the Open Group. Mike, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Would you want to take a minute to say something about yourself?
Sure. I've been a long fan of Mega and really appreciate the chance to come in and talk to your conference today. I spent about 20 years at Procter & Gamble, where I was, as Luca mentioned, the chief cloud architect, but also the chief shared services architect. I also owned Mega as a platform internally and provided that out to the rest of the organization, and also did a lot of EA training and capability building. After I left Procter & Gamble, I went into the consulting world and worked with organizations to set strategies and enterprise architecture plans, and also build out enterprise architecture practices. In a span of about 2 years, I trained over 500 people worldwide and worked with 13 different companies on their strategies and architectures. After leaving that world, I moved on to innovation and ran technology innovation team at Nationwide Insurance. And from there, went to become a chief innovation officer at a high-tech cloud company called Expedient. So really shifting gears a little bit from architecture and innovation, but bringing that architectural thinking into everything I do.
And now you're a CIO at Vernovus.
Today, I'm the CIO of Vernovus. I also run a business unit for the organization. So really business leadership role. But I find enterprise architecture thinking and perspective still very valuable in my role as business leader and CIO today.
It seems like you had the dream career of an architect, going from architecture for years all the way to a CIO.
Absolutely. And if that wasn't enough, I also teach digital topics at The Ohio State University. And so most architects could become great teachers as well. So I have a chance to do that too.
I guess that explains your thousands of followers on LinkedIn. Let's kick it off, Mike. First question I would have for you now, as a CIO, what would be your main expectations from your architects?
Great question. So obviously, I come from a little bit of a different perspective from most CIOs. Not a lot of CIOs have an architecture background like I do, but I actually think it's a really great training ground for a CIO role. My expectation of my enterprise architect is to be out in front of me on what's out there in the landscape. I want my architect to understand what's happening in the business. I want my architect to understand what's happening in the technology landscape. And I want them bringing those things back to me and advising me on how to bring that into the organization. I want them to help influence the strategies that I'm going to set for the organization, along with my partners at the executive level. And I also want my architect to really lead the transformation of my strategy into a plan for execution.
So that first part is really strategy and innovation with emerging technologies, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
It's also a little bit of digital transformation, right? So for me, when I teach at Ohio State and I talk about digital transformation, I say that digital transformation is the application of technology and data to transforming a company's business model and customer experience, right? And so you can look at that externally facing, but you can also apply those same concepts internally as well, where you view the IT organization as its own business and the other parts of the organization as your customers, right? So you can have internal and external digital transformation and still hold true to that definition.
So if I hear you well, sorry, please continue.
I was just gonna say, I think enterprise architects have a really key role in both sides of that digital transformation coin.
So if I hear you well, there's the innovation piece, emerging technologies, building the digital strategy. Now I have a couple of questions to rebound on those topics.
Sure.
The first thing, when you talk about innovation, architects are not the experts of each domain, right? They're not the experts of HR, the experts of sales, the experts in services. So how do you want them to drive innovation while not being the experts? And second subpart of that question, do you expect architects to be pure innovators and really drive technology innovation, or more of a governance hat where they say what technologies can or cannot be used in the organization? Is it more governance or more innovation for you?
So let me start with the first part of that question, right? So I do expect that my architects have background and experience and have built up a level of expertise over time. But one of the things that I think is really, really important in the enterprise architecture role is that they go very broad across the organization. They understand, and it's not just an inch deep, but it's a foot deep, right? They don't have to go all the way down. They don't have to be experts on every topic, but they have to be much more knowledgeable than the typical person about all of the different pieces of the organization and what's going on. And they have to be able to make connections, right? They see something happening over here. They need to be able to connect the dots to a business need over here, or an opportunity to gain synergies from working together across the organization. Same expectation in the external landscape. I expect them to be scanning the landscape, understanding what's happening in emerging technologies, understanding the new what's possibles that are created by emerging technologies. They don't have to understand how large language models work and what it means to create a transformer and how generative AI is actually built. They don't have to understand all that. They don't have to understand the details of a blockchain, but they do need to understand the new what's possibles. What are the things these emerging technologies are going to enable us to do that we've never been able to do before?
So now, if we stay there for a second, what would be your methodology or your approach to bringing such a technology? You mentioned blockchain, you mentioned generative AI. How would you bring, as an architect this time, those technologies to an organization? Is there a best practice to do it?
Yeah, so when I have done this in the past, what I have focused on with my organizations is really what does the technology do that we can't do today, right? So when I was at Nationwide, for example, I was the company's subject matter expert on blockchain. And when we were exploring blockchain, we had to understand all of the different what's possibles. Blockchain was doing things that we couldn't do today. Blockchain enabled us to have a distributed conversation that cuts across organizations in a way that the existing technologies typically couldn't do, right? So I had to understand what that meant, but then I also had to be able to apply that to my organization, right? So I had to know, what is the business architecture of my organization? What are the business processes that we have? What are the capabilities where we're not delivering what we need to deliver, where we have a business need? And can blockchain help me in those spaces?
So right? What you did, if just to make sure I understand it well, you mapped your business capabilities, your processes, and then you ran interviews with the process owners to see where blockchain could fit best. Is that the way you did it?
Not really. So the interviews weren't about where blockchain can fit best. The interviews were really about, help me really understand and break down the need. What's driving the need? What's the specific outcome that you're looking for, right? And then it was my job and the job of the architects that I worked with to match the need to the new technology capability and put those two things together. The architects were the connectors. They were the people that saw those connections and brought those connections forward. Now, what we would also often do, right, is we would start the discussion. We would be inspired by those new what's possibles that the technology would create. But then we would also make sure that we're not beholden to the technology, right? So I'll give you another example there. I think about applying generative AI to my organization today. Well, I look at my business processes across the organization. I see lots of potential places where generative AI could deliver real significant value for my business. But when I look across my business process, what I also see is opportunities for automation, opportunities for integration that don't require the heavy lifting or the additional capability of generative AI. It's a different technology, but they can drive real business outcomes, real business impact for my organization. So I'm going down the process. I'm driving the transformation inspired by generative AI, but I'm not going to be beholden to it. I'm not going to only apply generative AI. I'm going to use all the tools in my technology toolbox to deliver the business outcome I'm looking for. And that's the uniqueness of architecture to me. The architect has the broad perspective to be able to see those things in a way that most parts of the organization can't, because IT tends to be fairly siloed in a lot of ways.
But see, that drives another question. Coming back to governance, actually.
Yeah.
Today, we're in the world of SaaS. So if I go to my sales team or my marketing team, they're going to say, oh, I like this piece of software. I'm going to buy it. Here's the credit card number, or can I just buy this software?
Right.
And in that case, no architect came and said, oh, I recommend you should go with this or that technology. It's really the business saying, I need this to be more productive. In that sense, do you see the architect as being more of a governance body to say, oh, okay, you can do that, you can use it or not? Or, I mean, when do you need to be, or do architects need to be the innovator proposing and designing the recommendations, and where do they need to say, yeah, okay, go with this technology, that's fine?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And it comes back to that skill set of the architect that we were talking about earlier, that ability to go a foot deep broadly across the organization is valuable on the innovation side of the coin, but it's also incredibly valuable on the governance side of the coin. And that's why I think architects have to play a critical role in both. In the governance space, that person that pulled out their credit card and swiped it and bought this one piece of software that they thought was really amazing doesn't have the perspective, doesn't have the broad view of the organization to understand that 6 months ago, we bought the exact same piece of software for $20 cheaper, and it does everything plus what you just did, right? The architect sees that, and the architect can step in and play that governance role to say, no, we really don't want to go down this path because we've already made a choice over here. And that choice is either better or it's good enough, right? Sometimes it doesn't have to be better than the choice this person wants to make. Sometimes it's good enough because the area that we're trying to impact isn't necessarily an area where being the best is going to be differentiating for our company. I think that's one piece where, as enterprise architects, we have to bring it back to our business architecture, right? As we're making these innovation decisions, these governance decisions, we need to be led by our business architecture and our understanding of the different capabilities we have in our organization. And are those capabilities market differentiating for us as a company, right? If it's market differentiating for us as a company, best of breed may be critically important for us, and it may drive significant business outcomes for us, right? If it's not an area that's market differentiating, if it's a supporting organization, we'll use HR as an example. In most organizations, HR is a supporting function, right? Do I need to have the best of breed HR software? Probably not. It's not going to impact my customer experience.
So it's better for you. It's better for you to do 75% of the job with an existing platform than 100% with a new tool that you have to bring in, validate, test, security, etc.
Exactly. But the other thing that's critically important here, right? At the end of the day, to me, it's not the business process that typically is the most important. It's the data, right? And how is data flowing through my organization? Because the data is the input into the business process. The data is the outcome, the output of my business process. And so understanding where my data resides and how my data flows is also critically important. I'll use IT as an example real quick, right? And we think about the data. What's the data we need in IT? Well, it's the information we have in our EA tool about our enterprise architecture landscape. What are the applications that we have? What are the business capabilities we have? We want that data to be able to flow through everything that we do within the IT organization. We want everybody to be on the same page. We want everybody working off the same sheet of music. If I have one application portfolio in my enterprise architecture tool, and I have a completely different application portfolio in my ITSM tool, and those things don't match up, then I got a problem, right? And so to me, having integration, having sometimes a single platform where the data can be used in multiple different use cases, I think is critically important. The other thing I would say about a single platform sort of situation is that the more ways that you can use the data, the more the organization will care about keeping the data up to date, right? So if we go back to our business capability map, if we're using that to drive our business architecture, but we're also using that to assess risk across the organization, and we're also using that capability map to do business continuity across the organization, right? Now you've got all of these different stakeholders looking at the same data. And if that data is wrong, you're much more likely to see that it's wrong and to invest in getting it right.
So you're ensuring the quality of data also by having this platform perspective.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love what you're saying, because very obviously that goes into the mega vision where we put together architecture, but also process mapping, risk, and data governance all together for that same reason. So you're really going in our way there, and probably that's why we work together.
And it's one of the things when I was at Procter & Gamble, we did, right? We used, as I mentioned early on, we used the Mega platform, and we used it for business architecture. We used it for digital transformation. We used it for managing our business continuity across the organization. We used it to drive our software licensing, some of our IT asset management stuff. It was one platform where we tried to do everything as much as possible in the platform, and that was where we got a lot of value.
Technology selection, data analysis, software governance, and transformation, including the process mapping you said earlier. I love that view. Just trying to move on to my next question. We talked about the role of architects for business architecture, understanding the customer, that global view. But at the same time, I mean, I'm sure many people in the audience are asking, the level of maturity of architecture teams around the world is not the same everywhere. I mean, I have seen many architects that were happy just doing, for now, an IT inventory, consolidating application data, sometimes technology, focusing on, cost saving, technology obsolescence. But here you focus really on the business part, customer experience, business digital transformation. So do you think that goal applies to all architects despite the level of maturity, or is there a progression that takes place?
I think there is a progression. I think organizations need to mature their architecture practice. They need to increase the skill set of the individuals over time within the organization. And they also need to create that credibility inside the organization. If you've got a CIO that has never worked with a truly top-notch enterprise architecture team, you have to build up that credibility. You have to start by coming in on a project or two and really being that technical expert that can help drive decisions on that project and making that project outcome better.
So typically, I like where you're starting. So would you recommend starting with a project like implementing a new application, or with the description of the application portfolio, or either works? Where would you start? If you had to say 80% of organizations should start with, what would it be?
So most organizations that I have seen start with getting architects on projects. I don't like that personally. I think the number one thing you need to do with your enterprise architecture practice, if you're just getting started, is figure out how you can add value to the organization. What's going to be the way that you can add clear and distinct value to the organization, to the business, and how are you going to track that value? Because one of the things that I've seen enterprise architecture organizations fall down on over and over and over again is being able to describe the value they're delivering to the rest of the organization. And because that value is a little bit fuzzy, architecture can be a place where when there's a business downturn, when there's a change in CIO, when things happen, right? You look at the architecture group and it's this team of really, really experienced, really, really expensive resources. It can be an easy place to cut if you don't understand the value that architecture brings to the organization.
If you had a recommendation to give to the newest architects in the field, what would be the 2 or 3 typical value points where they should start focusing on to show value to the CIO?
I think the easiest place to add value to the CIO quickly is application portfolio management.
Mm-hmm.
It's proactive, it's tangible, and it's realizable. And so for me, when you're going to try to make this shift from reactive, working on projects, to proactive, that's the place I recommend organizations start, is application portfolio management.
Save some costs, consolidate the application portfolio, and then you would get into what would be the next step? Would you go into capability mapping, process mapping for digital transformation?
I think there is so much you can do with a business capability map. If your organization doesn't have one, that would be my next place to go to look for real strategic value, is business capability mapping.
That's great. Mike, I think we're almost at the end of our time. I would like to continue. There's so much I would like to ask, but I think we should leave the stage to the next speaker.
I appreciate the time, and I look forward to the rest of the conference. It's going to be fun.
Thank you very much. Bye, Mike.
Bye.
Good day. Welcome to the market analysis for trends in enterprise architecture. I'm Andy Neal. I run the enterprise research division and the technical counsel team at Infotech Research Group. Infotech Research Group is a research firm, and we work with many organizations across North America. My team in particular works with organizations such as NASA, Harvard Business School, State of Michigan, Curate Retail Group, and many others. We work with chief architects day to day. That's what we do. And I'd like to share with you some of these trends, some of these areas that we see real focus on going forward. Some of the areas that I'm going to be working on, so CIO priorities. So what does the CIO actually care about? What does the enterprise architect need to do to make sure the CIO is satisfied? What are those main challenges? What do we need to do in terms of difficult things? What do enterprise architects need to do which are challenging to those architects? How do we collaborate? How do we make sure that IT and the business work together? And how do we make sure the business is satisfied with what we're doing in architecture? And how does AI play a role into enterprise architecture these days? AI is everywhere, and we need to talk about that. And the final thing is zero trust and security. So zero trust is absolutely a concept that's going to occur again and again, and security is one of those areas that's going to get funding. So why don't architects help to make sure that zero trust is implemented the right way? These are the CIO priorities for enterprise architecture. Now, this graph, you can see growing investments up the top of the graph and the actual invested on the right-hand side of the graph. So we can see AI not invested as much as companies want to yet. They haven't put as much money into AI as they want to yet. They're going to, but they've not done it yet. So it's a growing investment. They're actually creating investments for AI, but it's not completely invested yet. What has been invested in already, and funds have been identified and put aside, are things like, you can see at the top right here, cybersecurity, cloud computing, APIs, and data. So it should be no surprise that cybersecurity comes out on the top right, because you can always get funding for cybersecurity. It's very easy to say, let's focus on making sure our ecosystem is tight and secure and reduce the risk of any kind of attack of any kind, including through APIs, which is where most attacks are coming from now anyway. We'll get into cybersecurity a little bit later in the presentation. We also can see an interesting fact here that the on-premise servers, in particular mainframes or standard applications that are on bare metal in your data center, they don't plan to invest any more. So investment's already done, not going to grow any more investments in that area. So going forward, enterprise architects have to help people with how do we adopt cloud? How do we move to the cloud? How do we transform our workloads into a cloud system so that it works over there? What are the main challenges for enterprise architects right now? One of the big challenges is agility. And what I mean by agility is not necessarily agile or safe or any of those frameworks, but the ability for architecture to pivot and be nimble when the business is changing what they're doing. And the business is changing what they're doing because of the advent of exponential IT, because the advent of things like artificial intelligence. So generative AI is everywhere right now. So off the shelf, you can buy products which do amazing things, Copilot and all kinds of interesting business-focused help. And the business is buying these things right now, whether IT like it or not. So architects have to really keep up with that and be those kind of thought leaders and make sure the business is making the right decisions when they're going through those investments and working with the business to make sure that the IT ecosystem supports what the business is trying to do. You do that by managing that business architecture. So understanding how the business works, how the business collaborates, what business capabilities are involved, understanding how the process works and how the process can potentially be improved by the advent of new AI-based technology is an important point for architects to be involved in. And of course, that data and security side. In order to get to concrete, really good quality AI, you need an amazing data pipeline. You need a data warehouse. You need a data lakehouse. You need data integration, all of these concepts. So focusing on data and investing in data and obviously securing that data as well is going to be an important part for enterprise architects to be involved in. Enterprise architecture maturity here, from a strategic perspective, it's interesting if we go down the bottom and look at what domains are involved. So these questions were asked not just to architects, but to all kinds of stakeholders across many organizations. And we came back with, integration and applications, obviously part of architecture, and that's what they do. Yeah, no problem. People didn't know that business architecture is something that architects do. Information and content architecture, and even security. So they don't consider that part of architecture. Why not? That absolutely should be. So that's where we want to focus on from an architecture perspective going forward. And what stakeholders are engaged with architects on the right here. So you can see that lots of people think that it's just IT that is involved in interacting with architects. It's not just IT, of course, it's business and IT together. In terms of the organizational structure of organizations, we can see that not everyone knows even that the head of architecture has been appointed. This is a real problem. If you don't know you've got an architecture team there and what architects do, how are you going to engage them? So that's a real big problem with many organizations. The other problem to call to here is that staffing level. Those that do understand what architecture is and see that they're there, they don't have enough people to do those activities. And then regarding the skills side, the skills are just undocumented. Even if architects are there and they're actively participating in projects, we don't actually know what their skills are. They're just uber individuals that know lots about IT and technology. But actually listing the specific skills that they have and they're executing on is lacking. On the tools front and enterprise architecture, it's interesting that when we did these surveys across many organizations, only 8% of the people said, yes, we have an architecture tool. So they might have an architecture tool, but not know about it. So that might be, I don't know. And 25% said no. So that means they don't have an architecture tool. Well, what are they doing? Perhaps they're using Visio or PowerPoint or other content, other tools to model architecture, not a proper tool to put everything in a repository. Even when they do use the tool, who uses the tool? Well, most people say don't know. Most people say it's non-existent. And those that do have a tool and do know about it just think the architecture department uses it and no one else. So you don't have that collaboration between architects using the tool and business folk using the tool, or analysts or data people or others. One of the important points of communication in enterprise architecture is the collaboration between different architects. It's important for organizations to create that collaboration mechanism. We call it guilds. So you might have a business architecture guild, a technology architecture guild, a data architecture guild. And it enables people that are involved in those disciplines to come together, share ideas, and bring up proposals on new standards to the architecture review board, for example. Those guilds are important to put in place because if you don't have them, then the satisfaction of the business with the communication from IT is lowered. When we say IT, data architecture, technology architecture, application architecture, normally IT focused. Business architecture is normally business focused. So when you have technology architects talking to the business, but they're talking to the business in silo and not having a holistic view and a one voice from the technology architecture perspective, it confuses the business and they're not satisfied. So that's where we get that 25.8% from. We, of course, with the advent of exponential IT and AI increasing as it is, we need enterprise architects to lean in and start to educate and coach and mentor those in the organization of what AI applications and solutions and technologies available and how's that going to help the business. In particular, business architecture we were talking about before, understanding how the business can be improved, how can they change the way they behave based on new technology to help them out, to supplement what they're doing. And if you think that that AI is ubiquitous and it's intrusive right now, just wait until the future. I bet the business is buying AI software right now without you knowing. It happens everywhere. So enterprise architects can really help here because they can lean in and start to educate and say, well, what does explainable AI actually mean? There's plenty of software that you can get off the shelf which can give you an answer, which can literally calculate based on your data an answer to a particular problem. And I say, here's the answer. Well, great. Why is that the answer? Don't know. That's what the AI told me to. So that's not good enough. We need to educate and we need to get people literate in being able to explain why the algorithm came up with that solution. And we need to make these things trustworthy. I always talk about data before I talk about AI because you've got to have a really good data pipeline, really good data quality. You've got to have a data lakehouse. You've got to have master data management, possibly. All these concepts, data management, comes in before AI, because otherwise, if you train AI with your data and your data is not as good quality as you want it to be, your answers aren't going to be as good quality as you want them to be either. So architects can put in place tools and technology to make that more transparent. Where does data come from? What happens in its pipeline? How do you explain where the data comes from, where it goes to, and how you came to that decision? And how do you integrate these roles and responsibilities together? In particular, when you're implementing AI and you're training your own models, you've got things like data ops and ML ops, and those need to connect together so that you can automatically create new implementations and new versions of the trained model as you go forward. So architects need to lean in there and say, okay, let's make sure that your DevOps pipeline is what it should be, your MLOps pipeline is what it should be, your DataOps pipeline, so that we get very, very quick turnaround as models are being trained in different ways, or as you add new data and new pipelines. And of course, we need to monitor those things as well. So architecture can help in providing the information to enable an organization to monitor the data and say, okay, this is the way the data looks. This is the information that we've got that we're pushing into the models. And this is why you're going to get the output that you're getting. So architects need to use that background, use that tenure, use that experience to lean in and help the business make decisions on AI and make sure that we're doing AI in a responsible, risk-free and fair way. One of the areas that we've done a lot of work with many organizations is zero trust in architecture. So we worked with NASA recently on their zero trust architecture. And one of the areas that we have to focus on when we're talking about zero trust is identifying a trust score. The ability to be able to say, when someone logs into a system with their enterprise digital identity, how much am I going to trust that individual? And which score do you use? Do you use a NIST framework? Do you use the ISO framework? There's all kinds of ways you can do it. But that trust score will probably be reflected on how did you log in? Did you use biometrics to log in? Is it multi-factor authentication? How did you actually do that authenticate? And that will give you some kind of level of authority. Which network are you logging into? That might give you another bit of authority, depending on who you are individually and where you come from, which organization you're with. There's lots of parameters that are going to contribute to that trust score. Then we match that trust score to the information that you're trying to access, or the service, or the application you're trying to access. And based on that, we can then match those two together for access to the organization, to the application. So this continuously changes and evolves as well. So because it's metadata driven, your ability to implement zero trust is dynamic. So there's lots of different technologies and lots of different architectural components that need to be put in place in order to implement zero trust architecture from the ground up. Thank you very much for coming to this event. I hope you've got some insights and some good information from this keynote. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the conference. Please enjoy all of these great presentations and grab that information, bring it back to your own organizations and make that special. Thank you.
For our presentation, we have decided to present you a very comprehensive EA journey, starting from the first stages that we encounter many times with our clients. We start by discovering assets and assess them. This first stage will help the company understand where it is and assess its maturity against the strategic objectives. Are we ready to support a fast growth? Are our tools sharp enough to support new products and services? That's the kind of questions that we're looking to answer in the first stages. In many of our projects, we've realized that this first step can be a little bit cumbersome as it can take some time. In a moment when management is looking for strong value of the EA practice. Knowing that, we've been working on new ways to tackle this problem at Mega by discovering and assess the enterprise architects by proposing automatic classifications of assets and linkage to the business items using AI mechanisms. Finally, we know that we're not all at the same level of maturity when we start our EA journey. This process is fully adapted to your maturity. And as we say at Mega, come as you are, and we'll make sure to put you on the right path. I will now let Michele show us how this looks like in OPEX Aquila.
Thanks a lot for the introduction, Yannick. When an enterprise architect connects to OPEX, he's presented right away with a dashboard presenting several indicators that highlight elements of attention where his intervention is required. For example, applications that have no owner, which is a must-have in order to ensure data completeness and accuracy, or areas in the IT catalog that require an intervention, for example, technology soon to be obsolete or without a life cycle. Also, for actions which are most common for the user, quick access points are provided through the homepage, like creation of applications, software technologies, projects, and so forth, or simply accessing to recently viewed objects or things I've worked on recently or my favorites. But let's now focus on how we can get the data inside the solution and build our EA baseline as quickly as possible. OPEX provides, first of all, the possibility to bulk import data via Excel. So it's there are predefined templates that the user can use in order to get all the existing data at once inside the solution. And the result will be a list view, which is very Excel-like, on which columns can be reorganized, can be filtered. We can add additional information related to our most important needs. So really, we can perform all the operations we're used to in Microsoft Excel. And already from the data that we bulk import into the solution, the user can perform some quick analysis through instant reports of different types. For example, we might want to take a look at how our applications are distributed from a technology compliance point of view in order to see which of our applications use prohibited technologies, so technologies that you have flagged as not allowed, and understand, thanks to a slice and dice approach, where these applications are used in the organization. So I can continue my analysis, launch another type of report on which I will observe which processes are being supported by the applications not complying with technology standards. So I can see what of these applications, which ones of these applications are used nowhere, and therefore eventually will not be on my priority one with respect to transformation initiatives. All of these reports can be printed in a PDF format, can be saved for later usage, exported in Excel, Word, and so forth. So we know that understanding which is an application that is a candidate for an investment or for a rationalization is not easy task. This is why OPEX comes with smart tools that help the user find the opportunities for transformation. We call this tool smart analysis. There are different types of smart analysis provided out of the box, one of which is the classical Gartner time analysis that allows to evaluate a list of IT assets of our portfolio and automatically recommends us which is the smartest transformation initiative to adopt. In this case, we see that based on the available data in the repository, OPEX computes a reliability score of the recommendation provided. And if the user wants to have a better understanding of why the tool is recommending us to invest, here is a detailed representation of both technology fit and business fit that were computed and where the application is positioned on the time matrix. Now, even if in this case the tool is helping us to identify the smartest recommendation, coming to a situation where the list of IT assets is built and readily available into the tool takes months, sometimes years. And therefore, this is why we have invested a lot of time into automating this process as much as possible, introducing artificial intelligence and machine learning services to make sure that you can get your IT catalog into OPEX and understand how it supports the business capabilities in a matter of few days. So first of all, what we want to help you do is to identify among the software products that you use on your IT infrastructure that we are capable to discover automatically which one of these software products are applications versus software technologies. So here our AI engine is capable to identify automatically this for you, and with a confidence rate is giving us this recommendation together with an integration with OpenAI, which brings a description of the discovered software product to help us take an informed decision on whether this indeed is an application or not. Once we are done with taking a decision, we can assign responsibilities, organize our applications into portfolios, and finalize the process. But then what we would have to do is to understand what these applications are used for, so linking them to a capability. And here also OPEX provides an automation called smart mapping. Thanks to machine learning, OPEX is capable to take a portfolio of applications and automatically identify for us which capabilities these applications support. The engine will go through the list of our IT assets, and for each one of them will output a list of capabilities of our capability map that these applications support. We can graphically observe the recommendation of OPEX on a business capability map, where we will be presented in green with all the links that OPEX is recommending us to build. So these green parts are the recommendations of OPEX, where OPEX is telling us these applications support this specific capability. You can whether accept or not, and automatically at the end of this exercise, we will end up with a fully functional business capability map on which we will be able to conduct our rationalization initiatives. So in this case, I see how my applications support the business. I can focus on only those which provide a very high risk of obsolescence so that I identify areas, for instance, in which we have too many applications at risk, and therefore we have to take possibly actions in order to reduce this exposure. So let's take a look at one of these applications. Let's go into our application catalog and see what's going on with airportmega.com. So first of all, OPEX presents us with an overview of the application with a set of indicators, some of which are gathered through questionnaires being sent to the application owner. Others are automatically computed, for example, the risk of obsolescence. This is a result of comparing the life cycle of the application provided by the end user with the life cycle of the underlying technologies, which OPEX can give you automatically. So if there is an inconsistency between the two, a very high risk of obsolescence is computed and highlighted for you at the application level. So if we take a closer look at what we can document in the characteristics of the application, we see that there are several information that we can gather. And for example, it would be interesting to assign responsibility to this application in order to get this person involved. Madison will be the person receiving questionnaires in order to ensure that the data that is required to document this application is indeed provided inside OPEX, and therefore we will be able to launch analysis on it. And regarding the computation of the technology risk of obsolescence, it comes from here. We see right away there is a technology, the application load balancer, which is at risk of obsolescence very high. And this is why we saw a very high risk of obsolescence on the overview of the application. If we want to have a global 360-degree view of the environment of this application, automatic dendrograms can provide us this information where we see all the flows that the application is sending and is receiving, the business capabilities that the application supports, the data being processed, all the processes consuming using the application and the technologies. Or we might want to better understand why and when this application will be at risk of obsolescence. This can be easily done with Gantt charts, where OPEX will highlight for us on a time representation where is the moment in which the application will be at risk of obsolescence. Here we see that this problem occurs at the end of 2025, because this is the moment in which the application load balancer will be obsolete. Now, before taking any action on this application, we might want to take a closer look at how it is interconnected inside the IT catalog, because if this application is removed, there might be other applications which will suffer from it. So once more, OPEX helps us build these views on the fly. We can create an exchange graph between applications in order to observe which are the flows that are emitted and received by the different applications in the repository, in order to take a better decision, an informed decision, and understand which are the impacts of removing this whatever application based on the observed information. We can go one step further, and in this specific case, having a very rich graph, we can hide all the applications that do not share anything, that are completely isolated, or focusing on an application of our choice, in this case is airportmega.com, in order to better understand what's going on with respect to this single application. And if this was not enough, we can go Star Wars mode, we can go 3D, in order to have a representation which is easier to navigate and provide us quick evidence of single point of failures and areas in which we are more exposed.
Fantastic, Michele. I really think that this process will help enterprise architects to make quick progress and iterate on the discovery of their assets. Now that we have discovered and understood how our IT and business landscape are working at a high level, we need to start defining our company vision, then breaking down into strategies, and start planning the most critical programs and projects that are going to help us support the vision. Michele, the stage is yours again.
Great, thanks. Let's see how an architect can define in OpEx the strategy and the projects that will help him achieve it. First of all, there is the possibility to document what we call the strategy on a page through a very simple graphical representation where we are displayed on one single page different transformation stages, which are these green rectangles, so representing either the current situation of the organization or the future, with a given set of strategic objectives, associated goals, strategy, and tactics. This is quite a static vision of what we would like to achieve. So we don't know yet how we will achieve this, but still it's a fair enough representation of where we would like to go. And it's quite easily exportable in either, for example, PDF format and printed out in order to be shared with all applicable stakeholders. Let's now take a look, however, at how this strategy will be put in place. So we can observe by automatically generated graphical representations the content of this strategy. It means for each one of these transformation stages, for example, the fact that we want to improve the customer satisfaction. It was one of the vertical green rectangles we saw in the strategy on one page. How we will achieve that? So which projects will take us there? And we see in this case a list of all the activities that will be launched in order to achieve the objectives of the customer satisfaction improvement. And most importantly, for each one of them, which will be the deliverables, in this case, a couple of applications and an IT service, and what will be the impacts on the business capabilities of the organization. So once more, in this case, we go one step further with respect to what we saw a minute ago. So we have been able to represent the strategy. We see now how we intend to achieve the objectives of the strategy, but this is still quite static in terms of information. We don't really understand when all of this will happen. And here we have another report which will help us answer this question, which is the roadmap of our transformation initiative. And what we can observe here is a graphical Gantt representation of the different transformation phases, which starting from the baseline, go through the customer satisfaction improvement and so further in the years to come. And for one specific transformation initiative, which is our customer satisfaction improvement, we can drill down and observe all the projects that will be included, that will be launched as part of this transformation initiative with associated impacted business capabilities. And most importantly, if these projects must end within the timeline associated to the transformation initiative, because if this is not the case, OpEx will be able to automatically trigger notifications and warn applicable stakeholders of the actual problem. Now, how can we take a closer look at these projects in order to eventually identify which ones of these are really worth investing in? We can do so through observing the portfolios of the projects. So we can take a look at all the projects that we put in place for the customer satisfaction improvement. And first of all, let's take a look at a dashboard, which will help us plot the projects with respect to different dimensions. For example, we might want to observe how the projects align to what type of business value they bring and how well they align to the strategy of the organization. And then let's add the third dimension, which is the ROI of these projects, so that we can observe with a dimension of the bubble if these projects are really bringing specific benefits in terms of cost and returns. So we see right away which is the area in which we should concentrate. So the upper right-hand side corner of this three-dimensional bubble chart, where we see all the projects that are worth investing into because they provide the highest business value, the highest strategic alignment, and the biggest bubbles, they will also provide the highest ROI. So now if we want to see how these projects overall impact the business and where we will carry out, well, we will focus our investments, we can do so through a view regarding the impact of the project deliverables on the capability map. So we simply select which is the capability on which we want to launch the analysis. And OPEX with a color coding representation will show us where the projects are modifying the business, where our investments are being, where we focus our investments. And for example, we might want to have a closer understanding of where such investments focus on innovation. Okay, and this with a couple of clicks, we identify all the capabilities being innovated by underlying projects which are modifying existing IT assets, reviewing them, retiring obsolete applications, or releasing new components. All of this can be represented once more with a time horizon. So we can observe, instead of a static view of the business capability map, we can exploit one of the existing reports available in OPEX, which allows to observe how the business capability map evolves over time because the underlying IT applications are retired and new ones are put in production. And we can observe how dynamic it is. We are in 2023. We display on the business capability map the applications which are in preparation or in production. And the moment we advance with the time, our business capability map is automatically being updated in order to show us only those applications which we are using at this point in time.
I must say, I really like this part of the EA journey, as this is truly where we can assess the investments of the enterprise. With this, enterprise architects have clearly a seat at the strategic table. Finally, a big part of the enterprise architect job is to design and share the future of the enterprise, assessing the solutions and make sure that they are bulletproof. In the next and last part of our demo, Michele is going to demonstrate how enterprise architects can easily design the enterprise, model IT assets, and make sure that everyone is aligned on this new future that we're designing. I leave it to you one last time, Michele.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. OPEX is not just a simple application portfolio management tool where we define the IT catalog and potentially we have the strategy and the projects in order to transform this catalog. But we also help the architect document in detail how and where the as-is will be transformed in order to achieve the strategic objectives. So once these objectives have been identified, a possible approach in order to observe which are the areas in which an intervention is required is to start with a customer journey. When we take a look at a customer journey, for example, of an airport scenario, in which we have decided from a strategic point of view that the customer experience must be perfect, we will be able to pinpoint during the different phases of the journey of the passenger, in this specific case, which are the moments in which the experience of the passenger is not optimal. And simply taking a closer look at the specific problems, which in our case relate to the check-in phase, we can take a look at which are the resources which are problematic. So we can observe that there are a few processes and IT applications which are involved in the check-in that we should probably take a look at because are delivering a customer experience which is not optimal. So here our modelers can take the as is, so in this case the model of a process, and plan for the to be and define where we want to go in order to improve the customer satisfaction. And in specific case, they might go ahead and design a process in which there is more automation, so where IT plays a more important role. And at any given time, OPEX will be able to graphically represent us the difference between the as is and the to be. So here, through the slider, we can observe in an interactive way what is the to be version of this process, where a new important IT asset is being introduced, the airline's check-in, which is replacing part of the manual steps that were probably at the cause of the bad customer experience. So now what we will have to do is to try and work on the airline's check-in application to make sure that indeed responds to the requirements of the passengers. So we will be able to take a look at the application from a solution architecture point of view. And first of all, we will spend a bit of time in defining the type of flows that this application must support, the type of data exchanges that we want to put in place in order to ensure that the overall service provided by the application is respecting the requirements. So let's go ahead and model the external data flows of the application. And here there is a good news. So this application, for the time being, already exists in our IT catalog and already has some data flows which are have been implemented. So we can ask OPEX to go ahead and initialize for us the diagram with the existing flows. So in order for us to start from something that is already very rich in information, and then we can go one step further. So for example, we can go ahead and add another flow with one of the IT applications in the catalog. For example, we might have identified that airlines check-in must exchange order data with the airportmega.com application. So we can do so very quickly. And as you can see, the moment in which the architect starts working in the diagram, things may become messy quite easily, quite fast. But this should not be a concern for the architect, because at any point in time, once the modeling is finished, once we are done with defining the overall architecture, external architecture of this application, we can ask OPEX to rearrange things for us in an optimal way. Now, let's pretend that we have, therefore, defined which type of interactions this application must have with the rest of the IT landscape. We want now to document the way in which we want to deploy the application. Okay, so it's a deployment architecture. OPEX comes in our help once more, because instead of leaving the architects working from scratch, we provide deployment patterns that the architect can use in order to make sure that the newly designed architecture follows the standard which are defined by the organization. In this specific case, we will make sure that we use the right packages, the right protocols, the right port numbers, and most importantly, for each element of the deployment architecture, the right technologies. The technologies that the organization has defined as acceptable for this type of architecture. So here we are letting the architects save a ton of time, making sure that their work is aligned, is compliant with the company standards. And the technologies that these architects might be able to use can be easily represented with reports that highlight what is available in the technology catalog. For example, in case of a cloud deployment architecture, pretending that we are deploying on AWS, it's very easy to access to breakdown reports that for every specific functionality that we might want to add to our newly developed architecture, it shows us the AWS services that come out of the box in OpEx together with those of Microsoft and Google for the architects to use in their architecture deployments. Back to you, Yannick, and the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Michele, for this great demonstration. We have achieved the objective of understanding the comprehensive EA journey that an enterprise architect is going through using OpEx Aquila in this case. From the first stages of discovering efficiently the enterprise landscape with AI mechanisms, and we go then to planning, defining the vision, and designing the future of the enterprise. Thank you all very much for your attention. It is now time for your questions.
Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed the breakout rooms, and we are back for our last round of plenary sessions. My name is Eva Gédon. I'm the head of data analytics and AI at Mega International, and I'm very pleased to introduce you to our guest, a special one, Sam Holzman, for a deep dive discussion into AI for enterprise architecture. Hi, Sam. Thank you so much for being here.
It is my pleasure to join you. Thank you for having me. We began doing enterprise architecture in 1972. We have been in the field in 3 areas. One is training, doing training work. Our major area is consulting, and we've had the privilege of working with over 4,700 organizations around the world in enterprise architecture. And recently, we also realized that most of us in the field are technology-oriented, so we introduced an area we call soft skills. In other words, how do you communicate the marvelous information that people have enterprise architecture to their stakeholders? So that's our areas of expertise.
Sam, again, it's an honor to have you with us. My discussion today with you, Sam, will cover a wide range of topics. So, Sam, as we begin our discussion, I'd like to ask you about your perspective on the integration of AI into traditional AI practices, and how do you see this integration shaping the future of EA?
Enterprise architecture is really about understanding what is required to enable the business and enterprise strategy. And within that area, there are many different options organizations can have. The question is, how do you analyze those areas as quickly as possible? So with the proper enterprise architecture, and now with the artificial intelligence tools, we can essentially simulate so many different options that we can look at various processes, various data sources, various strategies, and evaluate those faster than we ever could before. So fundamentally, from beginning of technology, we've been processing data. Now with AI, we can take that process engine and apply it in so many different areas that the enterprise architecture-driven approach will provide us with those roadmaps faster than ever before.
Yeah, interesting point. I think also that AI still today a journey, and sometimes it's like a long journey. And so you mentioned that there is data to analyze and from different sources, and it takes a lot of time. So I think that I join you on that AI can here have a significant impact on accelerating this journey. And that could be using, as you mentioned, his data to do some advanced data analytics, some automations, some recommendation systems for a better and faster decision making in the EA framework.
Absolutely. The issue is always and has been the data. And I know we'll be chatting about this a little bit later, but one of the great things about the internet is anyone can write anything about anything. And one of the problems with the internet is anybody can write anything about anything. Yeah. And so we have the situation now with these large language models that people need to set back for a moment. And that's why enterprise architecture is so important, that your enterprise architecture actually drive your usage of artificial intelligence.
So it is a very close related topics, so ChatGPT, generative AI, and we know that has gained a lot of attention lately. So the ChatGPT, this generative AI that can converse, respond to anything, including generating codes, generating images, and so on. So until recently, we heard a lot about in-house AI. So developed by data scientists, by AI specialists to boost businesses. This is normal. So it was either for improving operational excellence, what we call operational excellence, or for improving or even for creating new customer value proposition. But since November last year, we have seen a massive usage of ChatGPT that has, for sure, fascinated us with its conversational ability. It's very impressive, but also its capacity to make up answers, even when it is not sure. So this is, I think, a very important aspect to discuss here. So in your opinion, what are the implications of generative AI? And here we are talking about ChatGPT for enterprise architecture.
I think the best way to look at this is by a phrase that was used some time ago by the CEO of Google. And what he said was, when somebody was asking him about the results coming back from their AI engine, he says, well, the AI engine is hallucinating. Now, the phrase that I like to use is not hallucinating, but it's making mistakes. It's making mistakes. And so what we have to recognize is that these engines are trained on, or should be trained on, there's 4 different types of data. The most common data that these engines are being trained on is general internet data. And I think it goes without saying that there's questionable data out there on the internet. There's no doubt about that.
I agree.
And if these engines are being trained on that, they actually multiply the effects of bad data because they train upon themselves. The second class of information is something that all of us need to be conscious of, and that is the use of data that is copyrighted, owned by some organization, and used without permission. Now, what we have to recognize, that's copyrighted data, trademark data. And I think that if you explore a little bit, you know the number of legal aspects and lawsuits that are already being filed. And what we're suggesting, it's important to our audience is to recognize is that if someone robs a bank and you are the one driving the getaway car, you're going to jail too. So we need to be a little cautious about using that data. Now, let's be a little positive here for a moment. The third type of data is data that I call a mutual exchange of information. So you provide us with, let's say, your email address, and we provide you with an article that you can use. We call that an equal exchange of information. The fourth is the one that we really need to think about, and that is best practices. And to be a little bit direct, best practices cost money. They are not on the internet. So what we need to recognize is we have a very powerful engine, very powerful engine. What data are we using? And that's why we need to be cautious about these models. And let me close out this discussion here just a moment and say there is no verifiable research that we found that shows that large amounts of data is the answer. It's the quality of the data, not the quantity, especially when it's training itself on these things. Very powerful things that we can do. So I want to separate these engines into two parts, the processing and the data. Let's use the processes on our own data.
I completely agree with you. I think there's like quality in, quality out at the end. But the fact is that that ChatGPT, as I said, has impressed us with its response capabilities, and we have even seen stories that ChatGPT was able to pass medical and law exams. So it's like kind of a ChatGPT was able to learn some of these best practices in somehow. So this has led to a surge in enthusiasm to share everything with it, including sometimes confidential or intellectual property related to company informations. So this means that sharing data with a public ChatGPT, with OpenAI, that users use this data to retrain these AI systems. And so you refer to this phenomenon as shadow AI. So that brings me to the next question. So could you shed light on your perspective on this topics?
So the term that we discussed here, we call it shadow AI. And that goes back to the days of shadow IT. And of course, that isn't long ago. And it's basically the stakeholders, the business personnel, either because of frustration or because of curiosity, not going through the normal technology channels to do something. So this is common. This is common. We all play, and I call it, we play in a sandbox. So organizations, what we're suggesting to organizations is they make a sandbox. In other words, they build an area that is separate from the normal channels in their company, not on the same network, not on the same computers, completely separate, where the staff can explore things in a very controlled and non-threatening to the company manner. So shadow IT is happening. It's the business people and the technology people going and using and trying these things because they're so easy to download. And there's nothing wrong with that. We and the people using this have to recognize the downside is that once it's out there, that data, it's out there for everyone to see.
And that's why, so you mentioned secure AI in a private enterprise called what you call enterprise AI. And I would just to mention that it's not for free. So the organization, I know that ChatGPT is public and some of the version is free, but to be able to use this securely AI ChatGPT, so the organizations have to put that in place and encourage the usage of this version of customized ChatGPT. For example, in Azure, Microsoft, they are proposing that in order to somehow minimize the risk of sharing enterprise data. And I think it's a very important point here to mention that there is an alternative of that. It's what you call enterprise AI.
I don't know if we've coined the term, but we call it EAI, is what we believe the future is in. And I'm going to change the A and the I also. We believe the correct term is enterprise augmented information or enterprise augmented intelligence. That's really what the organization is looking for. If you look up the word artificial, it's something you actually don't want to do because it means it's fake.
You're right.
So I know that sometimes we put names on things, but truly, EAI, enterprise augmented information, is the power of these new engines if we think about it as a tool in our enterprise with good data. Look at the power that comes from an architected environment. Once again, it starts out with an architected environment that drives the implementation through EAI.
This is exactly what I wanted to mention next, is your term about augmented intelligence. And you shared that 2 years ago in your Real Talk podcast, that AI is here to augment our intelligence, and we must take advantage of it properly with best practices, as we just mentioned before. I think it's a new world. We are entering a new world of AI, and we can't bypass it. So now organizations must integrate it. And if AI, including generative AI here, is securely integrated into businesses, it could offer an alternative of the capabilities we have in public domain, as we said, and this would allow stakeholders to take advantage of these AI capabilities and enhance their ability to in their daily job. But however, with this comes fears of people being replaced by AI. So, in your opinion, what is the role of AI here in enhancing human capabilities? If you could share with us your thought about augmented intelligence, and how can we leverage augmented intelligence to drive greater innovation and efficiency?
So I'm going to give two analogies, which I think are very important. My career spans a number of decades. And I remember in Detroit, Michigan, I'm from the Detroit, Michigan area, automobile area, there was the dream of what they called a lights out factory. You put a number of parts in the factory at one end, and magically and mystically an automobile comes out the other end. A lights out factory, all robotics and things like that. That was in the 80s. This is now 2023. It hasn't happened yet. Most recently, Tesla Corporation in California was thinking the same thing. And Elon Musk and the company said, we can do this. Well, if you look at the factory in California, at the back end of the factory is this massive, almost 1,000-foot addition to the factory because they realized the robotics couldn't do it by itself. One final point, automated driving. I had the privilege in 1984 to drive an autonomous, I won't tell you the brand, vehicle. 1984. This is now once again 2023. I was driving down the road with my wife, and something in my brain said, this car is not stopping at this red light. I don't know exactly what happened. I slammed on the brakes at the last moment, put my heart back into my chest, and pulled over to the side of the road and realized the limitations. I'm enthusiastic, but the limitations. So, for example, the automobile could not see ahead of the car in front of me. You and I sitting in the driver's seat, you can peer multiple lanes of cars out farther and anticipate what is going on. So I love technology. I have more technology toys probably than most people, but I also recognize the limitations. So what we have to realize is reskilling. Instead of picking things in a warehouse as human beings, the people in the warehouse are going to be driving the robotic arms. Different set of skills going on here. Maintenance, training, enhancements.
Yes.
And that has gone on throughout history. There has been skill displacement since the agricultural days for humanity. The number of farmers there are today compared to 100 years ago, same type of situation. This is the first time technologists feel, I'll use the phrase, threatened a little bit.
Yeah.
Because we're kind of young. It's training and education rather than trying to stop the progress because it's already out there. So let's harness that.
Yeah, you're right, and awesome because you are really in the logic of the talk, because this brings me to the next topics about awareness and the training to address the AI limitation and security. So I believe that most people think of AI mainly from a technological perspective and sometimes have unrealistic expectation of it. Something like, let's hire some data scientists and magically AI will solve many of our current challenges. So unfortunately, that's not the case. It's much more complex than that. So it's about how aligning AI with the organization's strategy, ensuring that various AI applications integrate well with the data and the processes of the company, and most importantly, how it's used by different stakeholders. So one of the important points here is to emphasize is the significance of people's skills in the equation. So we discussed AI security and the importance of enterprise AI, but it is also about, as you mentioned, so the knowledge that people have in the organization about the systems, so the awareness and training. And when talking about ChatGPT here, for example, there is also an aspect about how to get the full potential of this generative AI. And we are talking about some new jobs like prompt engineer and the use of AI responsibly. So given all these aspects, so my question is, how do you see the role of awareness? I think you mentioned that, but just to elaborate more about the role of awareness and training in ensuring the successful and sustained AI integration with organizations.
I know the conference, and I'm not trying to overplay enterprise architecture, but it starts with enterprise architecture. Enterprise architecture is what provides us with an understanding of our, if I can use the analogy, DNA. Every organization, just like a human being, has a DNA. Once we understand that, then we can harness that with AI. That's the power that we're talking about. So real enterprise architecture provides the descriptive representations of the difference between our organization and another one, and then we can apply the AI engine to it. So what we need to do is to train more people in enterprise architecture and then have those people look at the AI tools. Notice what I said, tools, and apply those. And that's the training and education that's required. So we suggest that most organizations are still in the mode of what we call handcrafting, writing programs.
Yeah.
We're going to move forward and use these EA-driven AI tools.
Yeah, good.
And
Yeah,
that's what's going
exactly.
to move us forward.
We came up to the end of our discussion. Thank you, Sam. So we covered so many topics in AI and EA. Before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or words for our audience?
I would like to just summarize what we have to recognize. All of us are in the internet age, and the internet facilitates transactions. Software provides tools. AI is going to use the data now to drive decisions. How, though? By building models that map the relationships between all of this data that's out there to make patterns, to make predictions, to drive decisions. So this is where we have to recognize that this is going to facilitate what you and I are doing. So let's have some fun out there, but recognize where we are as far as the maturity of this whole area. I think that's the lesson we need to recognize.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you, Sam. And I would like to thank the audience for their attention and participation. I hope that our discussion has provided you with insightful takeaways for integrating properly and securely AI in your EA journey. And before we conclude, I would like to introduce the next session, a roundtable addressing the challenges of cyber resilience. So this session will be moderated by Paul Estrach, and it's promised to be an engaging and informative discussion. So thank you again for joining us today, and I hope you enjoying the rest of the Mega EA Exchange Conference.
Hi again, everyone. Thank you very much, Paul, for this excellent roundtable. In the next session, we're going to focus on the latest trends of EA tools, and we're going to see that there is a lot going on in the EA market right now, especially due to ever-changing market conditions, which requires more and more business agility, and also the democratization of AI technologies such as generative AI that impacts a lot the different companies and also, of course, enterprise architects. So we're going to see today how the vision of enterprise architecture is set within Mega, and how our OpEx platform supports this vision and supports our clients that are enterprise architects. At Mega, we want to make sure that every EA practice is empowered by the solution that it is using. You can start at your own level of maturity and grow step by step into becoming more and more mature within your company. We also want to make sure that every EA practice will produce undeniable value to the business users. To do so, we would like to produce reports and generate insights using AI that will be valuable to the use cases and the mission of our clients. And finally, we see that EAs are breakers of silos. We want to make sure that we produce one single view that helps connect business, IT, but also data and security to have one 360 view of the enterprise, which is required to perform the right business transformation programs when a company has decided to transform itself. When we talk to our clients, many clients are asking us, what is enterprise architecture? But we'd rather have the question turned a bit differently by asking, why enterprise architecture? For Mega, enterprise architecture serves the purpose of aligning the company's operations to its strategy.
by design. So we want to make sure that the way the company operates is consistent with the way the mission and the vision has been set by the C-levels. To do so, enterprise architecture will be able to provide multiple services, such as application rationalization, such as business model and business operation modeling, or such as data governance. So all of that are services that EAs will be able to provide within our HOPEX solution. Our vision for enterprise architecture is to make sure that every EA practice will be able, again, to deliver undeniable value to stakeholders that are outside of the EA group, which is very important because we need to be able to ensure that the value of the enterprise architecture is felt and is consumed by stakeholders that are outside of the EA program. At Mega, when we start a new program, a new EA practice, when we help our clients to set up new EA practices, we want to make sure that you are starting from the point where you are currently. So if you start your journey from a standpoint of maturity which is a bit lower, you will be able to start with us, and we are experienced enough to have the use cases that will help you grow within this maturity scale. So you will start from maybe more a noisy perspective, then becoming useful, trusted, and then influential. Influential is where we would like our clients to be. This is where EA becomes the trusted advisor of the C-levels, and they are every time consulted when there is a new program or transformation program that starts. This is very important for us, and our whole goal of our HOPEX platform is to help EA practices grow into that maturity scale. Let's now see how the HOPEX platform will help support this vision. So at Mega, we are building our new features and new capability with three core principles in mind. First of all, intuitiveness. We want to make sure that every new feature, reports, diagrams is intuitive enough to be built by user without having a lot of training, and making sure that every new feature is straightforward and engaging for the consumers of the deliverables. Second core principle is simplicity. We want to make sure that the user interface is friendly enough for stakeholders to simply engage and create data within the repository, and simple enough for non-technical users to be creating data and sending data to their clients using our platform. And the last key principle is that we would like our platform to produce valuable insights, to make sure that every report or the deliverable will be intuitive enough to be consumed by non-technical users, will be engaging enough, and will be adapted to the level of maturity of every stage of your maturity scale. So how does HOPEX support all of these new trends? First of all, as you have seen before in the demonstration, we have strongly enhanced our user interface to make sure that it is simple enough and user-friendly enough, and that our users will love using our solution. Second of all, we would like to enable greater connections. We would like to make sure that we will have one simple view with every data domains that are accessible for the users, meaning that we would like to have one simple view in which we can connect business and IT, of course, but also data and security to provide a 360 view of the enterprise. And finally, we would like to augment the enterprise architecture capabilities with artificial intelligence to make sure that artificial intelligence will help build these reports, these deliverables, but also help the enterprise architect in their daily job. So we are currently using AI in order to optimize the EA process, reduce the risks in the EA process, and making sure that we provide more valuable insights as well. But we do that with many key principles. First of all, we do that with security and ethics. We want to make sure that the data we use is securely stored and that we use ethically the data that is provided within our repository. But also with explainability that enables AI to explain every decision and justify every decision within the solution, so that enterprise architecture can understand how AI came to that conclusion and can reverse the decision if needs be. That decision will then be stored and will feed the algorithm that we have into HOPEX. So we have led multiple projects at Mega right now to enable AI for our clients. First of all, it's the smart assistants. The smart assistants will help enterprise architect ask questions about how to use HOPEX, how to build reports, how to build diagrams, and the smart assistant will help them, guide them within our solution. The smart assistant will also help them understand how to better support a business use case. If you have questions about how to mature or how to grow your maturity within your EA practice, you will be able to ask that to our smart assistant. We also provide features of auto-classification. We understand that when we start a new EA program, you will need to spend more time to import data, classify data, and make sure that everything is at the right place. This is something that we provide right now at Mega, the ability to scan and classify automatically some of the data that you're going to import, enabling you to jumpstart and save valuable time from your enterprise architect. We also provide generative AI that will help provide descriptions for your IT assets and business assets within the repository. Instead of having to go into all of the assets and add this description yourself, the AI will automatically input this information within the repository. And again, this will save a lot of time for your enterprise architects. And finally, we want our AI to support business and IT alignment. Every IT assets that will be stored in the repository will be suggested a business use, a business capability that then can be reversed, of course, by the enterprise architect, but HOPEX will suggest these links within the repository. So this is, of course, some of the AI use cases that we support in our HOPEX platform that you might have seen earlier in the HOPEX demonstration, but we also have new use cases in our roadmap that we would like to cover in the future. First of all, a general purpose AI to help model creation, to help our clients understand where they need to start, which models they have to create, and what are the value of the model that we're going to create. Then we would like to use natural language queries for reporting. Instead of having to understand the model behind HOPEX and understand how to build these reports yourself, we're working towards a way to ask natural language questions within our solution, and HOPEX will provide associated reports. We're also looking for new ways of helping the onboarding of our non-technical users by providing AI that will enable them to guide them into our solution. And finally, we would like to improve more and more our intake process, classification, and recommendation process in order to provide the right level of decision-making that is needed for companies. This is it for me. Thank you very much for attending my session. I hope you find it interesting. And by the way, this is the last session of today's conference. So from everyone at Mega, I would like to wish you a wonderful day. Thank you very much for attending this session. We invite you to follow us on social media to stay tuned on latest news of Mega and new events. And in the meantime, we wish you a wonderful day and see you soon. Thank you very much.